So tonight, guys, I have Sally. I went off. I was actually thinking about your question, which was around fasting.
Fasting,
yeah, which is a really good topic. And I started to do notes on it and everything. And I reckon that if you understand this topic, which is about metabolic damage when dieting, that will lead on to a better conversation about fasting. So that's the main thing I've got to talk about today.
Okay.
So, yeah, which is like being in a caloric deficit, and then obviously, is there damage done to your body if you don't go without food for a long period of time? Kylie had some. Hello, Kylie. Saw you down the bottom there. She had some questions about brekkie ideas, so we'll get to that at the end. But first up, I've got a bit of a game for us. You ready? Now, if you've got a pen and paper, write these down. If not, just store them in your head. We're talking about calories today. So this is the calorie guessing game. There's 3 things to guess. The first one, and there's a prize at the end. First one of the 3 items is a chocolate chip muffin from Muffin Break, because it's the only one I could look up. How many calories in that? Write it down or store it in your head.
What do you think?
Don't look it up, you people, too. I don't know what you're doing. Number 2, how many calories in a chocolate paddle pop? One of my favorites, a little chalky paddle pop.
With or without the stick?
No, you can eat the stick, the Michael stick. Then you got that one. And then third, I've got my dinner tonight ready, which I'm going to eat straight away after this. Check this out. Potatoes, 750 grams, a massive plate of potatoes. 250 grams of chicken breast and 500 grams of vegetables. It's a huge meal, right?
That's what you're eating?
250 grams of chicken.
Chicken breast. So
Okay.
what's that worth in calories, guys? Okay, write it down.
Okay.
All right, now.
The whole thing or just the chicken? The whole thing?
All of it.
Okay.
Right, so now I'll give you the scores, and if one of you gets within, let's say, 20 calories of each, Sean will give you a lap dance at the end, right? So you get
Between the sheets, Sean.
Sean Reese. So the muffin was worth 633.
Wow.
I said 550.
I said 450.
I said 600 neat.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
There you go.
The paddle pop, 79.
I got 80.
I also got 80.
Well
Yeah.
done.
I said
Yeah.
5.
So isn't that amazing? Like just that one little difference. Like, my dinner there, 690 calories.
I guess 400.
With the potatoes?
Yes.
Potatoes, yeah. Yeah.
And the chicken that was only 700 calories.
Now, those potatoes are the low carb ones, but they're not, it's different. They're only like 25% less carbs. So even if you had 600 grams of them, it's still a lot, right? But I just wanted to show you all that first to show you the difference in actually clean food and volume of food versus like little bits of like picking, which is how most people eat, and why calories are grossly underestimated by most people. Okay, cool. So let's jump into it. So firstly, before I go into everything around about metabolic damage caused from diet, or does dieting, having a caloric deficit, cause metabolic damage? Let's explain, make sure everyone's across actually what a caloric deficit is. So a caloric deficit is simply eating less calories than what your total daily expenditure requires, okay? So if my daily expenditure is 2,800 calories and I have 2,000 on an 800 calorie deficit per day, and if I do that, I will lose weight, body fat. Sorry, I'll just let one person in. Perfect. I will lose body fat, right? Everyone okay with that concept? Sweet. Okay, so the main question, and this question is probably I've been doing health and fitness for almost 20 years now. It's probably the most common nutritional question that I get asked is this, is that if you're on a diet that's really low in calories for a long period of time, will my body enter starvation mode? Has everyone heard starvation mode before as a concept? Yeah, or metabolic damage or metabolic syndrome from dieting. It's called lots of things, right? Where it's essentially your metabolism slows down and you damage your metabolism because of a deficit, okay? And most people, this usually comes out because people stop losing weight or start gaining weight on a diet, okay? So just before I start, I'll give you a couple of definitions. So when I'm talking about starvation mode, the fitness definition of that is having a really slowed down metabolism to a point where weight loss stops. But the actual medical definition is like being deprived of food to a point where you're causing like a lot of suffering and then subsequently death, right? So I'm talking about the fitness term, which is metabolic slowdown, okay? So why does this question come up so much? There's two main reasons, I think, is that someone that's legitimately dieting encounters or stalls with their weight loss or even starts gaining weight despite going on really low calories. That's one. And number two, which is also a common one, is that people don't really like being in a caloric deficit. And once progress stalls, they really search for a theory about why that's happening to get them onto the next shiny object, okay? So they're the main two reasons, okay? So what does the science say? So I'm going to reference this as my probably favorite nutritional study. It was done in 1945. It's the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. It involved 32 men going on a really high caloric deficit. It was 55% reduction in calories for a total of 24 weeks, okay? So essentially 6 months of the year. And the reason I like this is that it would never pass an ethics board again, this study, so it's probably never going to happen again. Starving people like to that point, most studies won't allow it. So, but it was interesting that just so you know, about 55% of a caloric deficit, how big of a deficit it is, it's a strong deficit. So most diets that we recommend if someone putting someone in a caloric deficit at Rush Co's Health, it's between 10 and 20%. That said, all the boys and girls at the gym, we're on dieting at the moment, and most of us are somewhere near 50% deficit at the moment, but we won't hold that for very long, okay? So to hold a 55% deficit for 6 months in length is a long time, okay? So what does that actually mean? For these males, their average TDE, total daily expenditure, was 3,400 calories. That's what they needed to live, but they were getting around about 1,500 a day for the 24 weeks, cool? So what was the outcome? Okay, so at the end of the 24 weeks, the researchers found that 0 of the participants entered starvation mode. Okay, so 0 happened. Subsequently to that, none of them stopped losing weight or body fat. Okay, and by the end, all of them were under 5% body fat, which, to give you a reference there, that's like seeing someone on a bodybuilding stage. They didn't have any muscle, but they were that lean, okay? So they were absolutely ripped. Cool. So how much weight did they lose? Okay, so most of them lost, on average, so the average was 24.5% is what they lost. And their metabolism, although they didn't get metabolic syndrome or starvation mode, their metabolism did slow down quite a bit. And this is the really interesting part to understand of the study. And it's where some truth comes out about people entering starvation mode, is that during diets, your metabolism does slow down. But what is the reduction caused by is the key thing, okay? So the participants on it, the 24 participants, their reduction in metabolism, metabolic rate, was 40%, okay, during it. So the biggest part of that 40%, so 25% of that 40% was due to a reduction in their body mass. Okay, and this is really important to understand, is that a bigger body has more tissue requiring fuel and energy to keep it going throughout the day. And the easy example of this is if you've got a female that goes from 70 kilos to 60 kilos, to give her the same metabolic rate as she was at 70 kilos, again, you put a dumbbell on her back and just her daily activities would match that 70 kilo person. Does that make sense? It takes a lot more energy to carry the weight around, okay? So that was the main reason of the reduction of metabolism, okay? So the 25% of the 40%. But what was the other 15%? Okay, the 15% was due to an adaptive metabolic slowdown called adaptive thermogenesis, okay? So before I go into that, just so you know, even though there was this 40% reduction in their metabolic rate, none of the participants ever stopped losing weight or body fat week to week, okay? They lost every week, and a slowdown in their metabolism only happened once they're under 5% body fat, which most people never get to that stage, okay? So what is the 15%, okay? So the majority of the 15% was due to a reduction in NEAT. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, okay? So what is that? It's every movement that's not exercise related, okay? So it's how much you walk from the bedroom to the bathroom, to the stairs, to the office. It's how much you fidget. It's how much you roll around. It's all that sort of stuff, okay? And so essentially what they're saying is that most of that 15% was due to the participants actually just moving less and not knowing it, okay? What's really interesting about NEAT is not a conscious activity, it's subconscious. And your body is really, really intelligent. So it knows you're in a caloric deficit, and it will slow things down for you to actually minimize energy expenditure. So I'm in, what are you laughing at, Shorto? So I'm in week 23 of dieting. I've had a 3-week break somewhere in between, but I've noticed over the last month that I'm quite a busy person, but if you put me on the lounge at the moment, I dead set, my eyes don't even move. I'm a sack, okay? As soon as I stop, I stop. And that's my body trying to reduce my NEAT, okay? So how much I move in between. Cool. Have I got over the tips there? Yep, cool. All right. Also interesting about NEAT is the variance between individuals, okay? So in 2014, there was a study about NEAT and individuals and the variance between how much they move, and comparing two individuals side by side of equal gender, size, age, and body composition, the variance in calorie expenditure between those two exact replicas of those people, okay, two identical people, size, shape, gender, body composition, could be up to 2,000 calories difference per day. So using my example again, I'm 2,800 per day. That could mean someone of exactly the same shape, size, gender, age as me could be 2,000 or 4,000 a day, depending on how much they're moving around in between their exercise sessions. It's a huge amount. And subsequent studies about NEAT have found the variance in NEAT between individuals is the most common reason that similar diets and exercise programs have such a wide variance of effectiveness between individuals. Does that make sense? So you've got the same diet. Why does this person get a different result to this person? The most common reason is a difference in NEAT, okay? How much they're moving in between exercise sessions. So just a side note on that is, how do we actually measure NEAT? Like actual measure movement? The only way we know how is step count, okay? And so this is really, really important for someone on a weight loss plan or a fat loss plan long term, is monitoring NEAT through step count over time, and especially taking your watch off during exercise sessions is really, really important. Because if you don't monitor that, as your diet and your caloric deficit goes, your body will naturally slow down. And if you weren't monitoring, you might do 12,000 steps a day. By the end of like 16 weeks of dieting, you might be down to 4,000 steps a day and you would never know it. Okay, cool. Last one on NEAT, there's been other studies that have shown that because it's a subconscious thing, right? The reduction of it is the larger the caloric deficit, the larger and quicker the reduction of subconscious NEAT is, okay? So with that in mind, is that's why most people don't put everyone on a really high deficit caloric diet, because as soon as they do that, they're a couple of weeks in or 3 weeks in, that their reduction in movement is such that the diet stops working, okay? So outside of NEAT, we've covered that. What else sort of factors into a stall of weight loss, okay? So this is the main one. There's two reasons, okay? So the main one is that people are really bad at estimating caloric intake and energy expenditure. So in 2006, there was a study of 65 women, all healthy postmenopausal women, and their only job was to record with 100% accuracy in their food diary exactly what they ate for 7 days. They were issued scales and everything they need to measure and weigh their food, and all the charts and everything to work everything out. And the average of them underreported what they ate by 37%, okay? So that's the main reason that people are not actually seeing results. If they're not sticking to eating the same thing every day, it's actually underreporting. And I don't think this is, like, I've been dealing with this issue my whole career. I don't think underreporting is intentional. It's just people are forgetful. So they get to the end of the day and they forget they added sauce to something, and they had a biscuit with their coffee and they forget to put that in. And over time, those little things up, and that ends up being around about 40% of your diet, okay? Rarely, it's never been shown people over-report what they eat, okay? So what's the second one? And it's an important one. It's water retention, okay? So, and this is really, really important because it's linked to motivation. So if you're monitoring your weight over time and your weight loss, your scale weight isn't shifting, or it's even going up at times, it's really hard to account for if you're only using scales, is what is that due to? And retaining water is really common, and there's lots of reasons, but there's three main ones. It's stress has a massive impact on water retention. Hormonally, especially women in their menstrual cycle, obviously is a big one. And sleep has a massive impact on water retention as well. So the key here is you've got to be patient. And if you're using the scales as a metric over time, if you're not getting results, but you're being compliant, is that, and I see it all the time, someone will be dieting for a block of period, and they might be getting a month where they're getting no result. Then on week 5, they drop 2.5 kilos, right? The water comes out of them, okay? So that's really, really important to note, because most people, what that leads to is demotivation and then poor compliance, okay? So in summing up, what have I got? So just so you know, caloric deficits do not induce starvation mode at all. And the most likely reasons that your weight loss or body fat loss has stalled is is 1, you're eating more than what you think you are. 2 is water retention, is masking your weight loss on the scales if you're using scales as a metric, leading to less motivation and poorer compliance. Or 3 is that your caloric deficit may be reducing your NEAT and you're not aware of it. Okay, so they're the 3 big things. So my advice from there is, there are also 3 things, is always run a more manageable deficit. 10 to 20% like is what we say. You can go bigger than that. But in my experience, someone in that deficit has a higher compliance and they're less likely to have diet rebound at the end where they overconsume. The best example of that is when you do a bodybuilding competition, like a month after that composition, that most competitors look in terrible shape because they've starved themselves so hard. It's very hard to comply and they're so hungry that they overconsume so much. Second point of advice would be always monitor your NEAT and make sure you're monitoring your NEAT, taking your watch off during exercise if you want it to be accurate. And number 3 is that understand that in a reduction of your body weight over time will lead to a reduction of your caloric expenditure. So if you're dieting for 6 months, you either, to keep getting results, you would either, especially in a small deficit, you need to keep ratcheting down your calories, or you need to ratchet up your expenditure to keep getting results. That's all I've got on that, guys. Is there any questions? Good? Happy? Yeah, thumbs up. That's great. We've still got Kylie here. Did she leave?
Kylie had to leave. She said, yeah.
Nick, is it different between men and women? I mean, men seem to lose weight just thinking about it. It's really
Not all of
annoying.
us.
It's
So
very
annoying.
annoying.
What do you reckon that's down to, though?
Bigger muscle mass.
That's it. That's all that is. And so like the best analogy for that is like a V8 car pulls up at the lights and a little car or a motorbike pulls out the light. The V8 car is a male, like a bigger male, like Chris Baines, 100 kilos, really lean. At rest, he's burning so much fuel versus like my wife's like 55 kilos. At rest, she's burning nothing, right? And so, and that's the reason for strength training, Sally, over time, is the biggest impact you can have on a higher daily metabolic rate outside of NEAT is consistent strength training. And it's not to get massive, it's just so your muscles are burning more, you're burning more juice at rest. Yeah. But no, there's no difference in metabolic syndrome between women and men. Cool. Any other questions about that?
How do I work on the
knee?
knees?
From hormones as well, or
Sorry?
does hormones play an effect as well in fat burning?
Yeah, but for both men and women, obviously hormones, as you age, you go through changes, and definitely hormonal changes have an impact over time for both men and women. But it's not like the most common one with women is thyroid. Everyone's like, I've got to get my. That's a really, really common, and there is some people that do have thyroid issues and some syndrome around that, particularly women. But it's really, really rare that if they're really analytical about this sort of stuff, that this is like 99.9% of the problem. But there's definitely a reduction. I just know myself, I'm 42, and probably the same sort of weight I was at 25, but what I burnt at 25 as a 25-year-old, my expenditure is the same as far as exercise. Is that hormonally I was so much different at 25. You just burnt, your hormones are going crazy and you're burning so much more fuel, hormonally. Cool.
Fair enough.
Anything else, team? All good?
After seeing what you ate for dinner, I can now understand why your wife's only 55 kilos.
There's nothing left for her.
Huh? You took it all. You took the lot.
I'm so hungry too right now. It's right here. I'm just like, I can smell the potatoes.
Why are you all dieting?
Well, we're doing a photo shoot. So,
It's all for vanity.
yeah.
I thought it was some great experiment or something.
But it's funny, this, like, as bad as and like most trainers are the same as all the clients. We all struggle with food and have the same stuff. Like most trainers, though, enjoy exercise, so that's probably something that's a bit better. But as far as like food struggles, whatever you think trainers are better than you with managing diets, it's just not true. Everyone has the same shit going on, that's for sure. And so we'd set a goal at the start of the year to do a photo shoot together, which is like everyone being in really good shape, get a professional photographer, make it a bit fun, but we were going to do a funny calendar for the clients for the end of the year. But that was a part of it. And it's funny, it's interesting during this lockdown, it's probably been, I'm really thankful I'm doing it because I'm not drinking and not eating bad. I've got that accountability to that. If I wasn't, I think I'd be really struggling right now as far as food compliance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lucky thing. Cool, guys. We'll leave it there.
Can I just ask you one thing?
Yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts on those Thermogenesis drinks and like I'm 60 and my metabolism is dead. And I feel like I'm putting on weight and I'm training with Jen and I'm trying to do all the right things. How does one speed up your metabolism as you age? Because, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to bag any supplements and what they do, but in my personal opinion, like anything like that is sort of just like a little band-aid thing. It might start you for a little bit, but then there's a cost. There's always a cost.
No, I know.
So when you're coming down off them, you're reducing your meat and all that sort of stuff. So in my experience, no one ever has a long-term positive outcome from that sort of stuff. So how do you drive metabolism? So it's weight training is the main one.
Yeah.
Sleep is another one. If you're worried about your hormone levels, like have a good doctor, GP to do your blood work to make sure you get those ducks in a row. But Hazel, like I was talking to my mum about this today, and she's been fit her whole life, and she's still quite little, but she feels like she's gaining weight and she can't get ahead of it. But she's not analytical of a diet anymore as well. And I know she's drinking more than what she used to. Like she's moved up to Queensland, they've got a little social circle going on, and she doesn't see it happens gradually. She doesn't see the steps that she's having. So the first thing is just to be without emotion, is be super analytical about what you're actually doing. Because the most likely thing is you're either, if you feel like you're doing all the training, is that you're over consuming.
Yeah.
Not over consuming on a day-to-day period. It's usually over consuming like in a month or 2 month period.
Yeah.
So you might be good for a week and have a couple of bad days or whatever.
That's the problem. Yeah.
And that's really, if you can get to the bottom of it unemotionally just by data with no judgment, that's power then.
Yeah.
And that's the critical thing, like, because so often you skip to there's something wrong with me, and for 99.9999% of people, there's not something wrong with them metabolically. Their lifestyle or what they're doing has changed, and they've started to consume more. That's the reality of it, and that's exactly what that study shows. That reason.
Thank you.
Cool.